Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar all about the pension assessment in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Alice and I'm going to be your host and presenter for the session. I'm also joined by my colleague Duncan, who's behind the scenes ready to answer your questions in the Q&A as well throughout the session. And let's also look at what we're going to cover in the session. So I'll begin with an introduction, bit of a recap of your pension duties as an employer and also what the pension assessment is. We'll then move on to running the pension assessment, so how to kind of navigate this and identify any changes that you've had in a particular period. We'll then look at postponement, so what this is and how to apply it to your employees in the pension assessment. And lastly, we'll look at processing opt-in and opt-out requests too, so how to effectively process these again in the pension assessment. But as I said, I would like to begin with a bit of a recap of your pension duties because all employers have certain duties to carry out when it comes to pensions. You've got 4 automatic enrolment duties, and these include choosing a pension scheme and getting this set up with your chosen provider, working out who to put into the pension scheme or assessing your employees and whether or not they're going to be eligible for automatic enrolment. You'll also need to write to your staff to explain how automatic enrolment applies to them, otherwise known as sending pension correspondence. And fourth kind of step here as well is to declare your compliance. So basically declaring that your workplace pension is compliant and all of the information that you've provided is accurate. And if you would like a bit more detail or advice on these 4 steps, we have linked to the Pensions Regulator website about the 4 steps just at the bottom of this slide, which will have all of that information for you. But once you've done these 4 steps, you do still have ongoing duties as an employer. So your duties don't end there. First one is to assess your employees' age and wage each time you pay them to determine the worker type and see if they're going to be eligible and need to be automatically enrolled into the pension scheme. So you would normally do this manually, or in today's kind of session, we'll be looking at the other option, which is via the pension assessment. Every 3 years, you need to carry out re-enrolment duties, such as re-enrolling any employees who've left your scheme. You need to continue paying into your pension scheme. And lastly, you need to manage requests to join or leave the scheme and keep record of this too. And since I will be talking about them quite a lot during this webinar today, just a reminder of those worker types for your employees as well. So when they're assessed, they'll be assigned to one of these worker types, and that's entitled, eligible, or non-eligible. So a bit of a recap of these. Entitled employees are aged 16 to 74, working in the UK, earning below £6,240. And these employees will have a right to join your pension scheme. Eligible employees are going to be aged 22 to state pension age, working in the UK, earning above £10,000. And these are the employees that must be automatically enrolled into your pension scheme. You've then got non-eligible employees too, so these are going to be either 16 to 21 or state pension age to 74, working in the UK earning above £10,000, or they're going to be aged 16 to 74, working in the UK earning between £6,240 and £10,000. And these employees who are non-eligible have got the right to opt into your scheme. So those are your 3 worker types. Remember, you can download the handout if you want to kind of keep that information on that slide. And as I said, you would normally have to assess the employees manually to determine which of these they fall into. Then, if applicable, you would manually assign the pension scheme in the record. But that's where the pension assessment comes in. So what is the pension assessment? Well, it's part of the pensions module for Sage 50 Payroll, and it's designed to make your pension duties quicker and easier. Now, it is an additional module to subscribe to in Payroll, but the pensions module includes the pension assessment as well as some other options as well. So what the assessment does, it allows you to assess your employees automatically, and it'll assign the appropriate worker category to them. And if it assigns anyone is eligible. So if anyone is assessed as eligible for automatic enrolment, what it'll do is automatically assign your pension scheme to them. It allows you to easily filter and view any changes that have happened from each period, automatically calculate employee and employer pension contributions for the current period, and it allows you to efficiently manage opt-in and opt-out requests and process any pension refunds you might need to, as well as processing postponement. So it's a great option, ultimately saves you a lot of time, especially if you've got quite a few employees to assess. It will take a lot of those manual tasks away. And a little tip on how to check whether you've got the pensions module already. If you simply click on the pension assessment option in Payroll, you'll get one of these two windows come up. So if Payroll prompts you to take a backup, like on that left screenshot there, your license does have the pensions module already. So it might just be a case of kind of getting started with it. Or if it comes up with that second screenshot and asks you to subscribe to the pensions module, this means you don't have it. So your current license doesn't have the pensions module. You would have to subscribe if you wanted to use it. But I've linked at the bottom where you can kind of double check whether you've got it or not, and that does link to kind of what to do if you do want to look into getting the pensions module. And let's also look at when you would run the pension assessment in your pay run too. There is a particular time that you would need to run that. So after you've entered the payments for your employees, but before you do your pre-update reports is when you would run the pension assessment. Just see on that screenshot there, it's also an option on the process map, but it's normally found in your payroll tasks as well. So a couple of options of where to find it. And I will show you all of this in the demonstration too. But now that we know when to run the pension assessment, let's move on to how to run it. Now, in terms of running the pension assessment itself, there's not really that much to do other than click on the option, but it is really important to make sure that you've done the right things in the right order to ensure that the pension assessment assesses your employees accurately. So step one, you want to make sure that your process date is correct, which would be the date of your next pay run, and the date that you're wanting the employees to be assessed for. And at step two, you would enter the payments for your employees. So again, these first two steps are really important in making sure that payroll uses the correct payments and the correct dates in the assessment, and ultimately assigns the correct worker category to your employees. After this, you would click on the pension assessment option. It will prompt you to take a backup at this point too. Very important that you do take a backup at this stage. The assessment will make changes to your employees depending on their eligibility. So having a backup there just means you can restore it if you need to get back to where you were. And it's just a bit of extra security for your payroll data as well. And then step number 4 is to view the report. So once you've done steps 1 to 3, the pension assessment will kind of load up and you'll see something that looks a bit like this. So that is what the pension assessment will look like. All of the information's on one page. You've got your contributions and totals and things on the right-hand side, which is of course automatically calculated for you, as well as the employee status and worker type, and which is automatically checked too. But let me turn my camera off, we'll go full screen and just dive into a demo, and we'll go ahead and run the pension assessment. So I'm logged into Payroll, I'm logged into my company, got a monthly payroll here, and step 1, what I'm going to do is check my process date. So just from my payroll tasks, I'm going to check that this is set to my next pay date, which it is, 31st of October, as I pay monthly on the last day of each month. And that is step 1 done. Step 2 would be to enter the payments for my employees. But for the sake of today's webinar, I have already done that for October, so everyone's payments are already entered. Everyone's the same each month mostly, but I do have a new starter this month, employee number 14, just at the bottom here. And I've also got somebody who's due to start in November, so employee number 15. So I will highlight all of my employees. I'm going to miss out this employee starting next month. They don't need to be assessed just yet. And I'm going to move on to step 3, which is clicking on the pension assessment and of course taking a backup as well. So you will get this window to prompt you to take one. I'd advise clicking yes and working your way through the backup wizard as normal. And I'm just going to call mine pension assessment October 2024 and click next and finish. And once we click OK, we can see it goes through, assesses the employees, and up comes the pension assessment. So this is the report all loaded up. We will go through what everything means and just a little bit on how to navigate around it as well. So starting from the left side here, this first column is just letting you know who is currently selected. Now you could use this tick box at the top to kind of deselect or select everybody. You are also able just to select individuals too. We've then got this next column. Now it looks mostly blank, but you'll see I do have 2 flags, just little black flags there. They're actually showing me that there've been some changes this period. So employee number 7's had a change, and so is employee number 14. And if I hover over that flag with my mouse, I can see what that change is. It does provide details on what they are. So employee number 7, I can see their worker category has changed this period. They've actually started working for me full time, so their earnings have gone up. They've had a bit of a pay spike, and they are now eligible, which means they've been automatically enrolled into my pension scheme. And we can see that reflected in their status here. I've also got a change for employee number 14, my new starter this month. And if I hover over this, I can see Payroll knows they're a new starter and they've been assessed as eligible and therefore automatically enrolled into the pension scheme. Again, with that status showing here and their contributions on the right hand side as well. So just a reminder, a flag in this column is just letting you know of any changes this period. You've next got the employees' names, employee number, and national insurance number as well, so pretty straightforward there. And next you've got the worker type and status. So a fair amount of my employees are showing as eligible. I do have a couple of entitled, a couple of non-eligible as well. And if you're wondering why an employee is a particular status, you can actually hover over the magnifying glass and it will provide kind of, again, more details on why, along with the next steps as well. So a couple of examples. Employee number 6, this is one of my non-eligible employees. We can see they've got qualifying earnings of £1,744.17. So that is more than enough to be eligible. But because they're 73 years old, they're over state pension age and they're actually too old to be eligible, which is why they fall into the non-eligible category. And I think it's a similar story for employee number 11 as well. So again, they're non-eligible. They're still earning enough. They're earning the same amount as employee number 6, about £1,700. But they're only 21 years old. They actually need to be 22 to be eligible and fall into that kind of age category. So they're not quite old enough to be eligible and automatically enrolled. I do believe their birthday is coming up soon, so depending on when that is, I might be able to show you a change with them next period. If they turn 22 and they're still earning the same amount here, they will be eligible, so their worker type will change and they'll be enrolled. And notice in the next steps, just at the bottom of this little pop-up as well, these employees do still have the right to opt into the scheme if they want to. So if they did want to opt in, they would contact you, the employer, as per one of your ongoing duties. You would then need to process this request. And you can do that in the pension assessment in the top left. That's one of the options there, but I will come back to this a bit later in the webinar. I've then got a couple more examples, so employee number 8 and 9. Both of these are entitled employees. And again, let's see why. So this employee and this one, actually, both of them are both the correct age to be eligible. So we've got 38 and 30. So they are between 22 and state pension age, but they're not earning enough, only about £350 per month. And this therefore means they fall into the entitled worker type. And just to look at the next steps there, these employees have a right to join the scheme if they wish, as we can see just at the bottom. And a little tip as well, for entitled employees who join your pension scheme, the employer doesn't have to contribute. So if this employee wants to join the scheme, they'll join the scheme, they'll pay the contributions, but the employer doesn't have to. Whereas if this non-eligible employee opted into the scheme, the employer would have to contribute. So a bit of a difference there between entitled and non-eligible. And a few other employees I would like to point out in here. If we go down to employee number 12, they're showing as opted out. We can see their status is set to that. And again, in the next steps there, they can opt back into the scheme if they wish. And similar with this employee who's showing as cessation, they chose to leave the scheme, so they did opt out, but they opted out outside of the opt-out period, so it shows slightly differently. But again, they do have the option to opt in again. Next columns, we've then got the name of my pension scheme. So whichever scheme they're enrolled into, mine's just called My Pension Scheme, followed by the employee and employer pension contributions. There's also a refund column for situations where an employee wants to opt out, which we will discuss a little bit later. And then lastly, there's totals of each row too. So that is the main section of the report, but a couple more things to show you. So in the top left, you'll see we've got the options to opt in or join, opt out or leave, or postpone, which we'll cover a bit later. And also in the top right corner, you do have the options to filter the employee list. So let's say you've got quite a few of employees and you want to see only the employees who've changed this period. You can apply that filter to the list and it'll show the employees who've had a change. Same with other things, you can filter them by eligible employees. So everyone whose worker type's eligible will come up. Entitled, for example, so lots of things in there. You do also have a search function, so if you want to search for a particular employee's name or national insurance number, they will come up there too. So a couple of ways to kind of narrow that down if you've got a lot of people in this list. Bottom left too, you've got the options to swap or clear the selection, as well as confirmation of how many employees are included in the selection and the kind of total of the payment too. And of course that will change depending on who you've got highlighted. So if I deselect some people who've got contributions, we can see it brings down who's included in the selection and the payment total too. Now, not only is assessing your employees each time you pay them one of your pension duties, but so is keeping a record of who is joining or leaving the scheme. So on that note, something else I would like to point out in here are these options in the bottom right corner. So you can either email, print, or export as a CSV file if needed, and that's going to export this report for you. What I normally do is print it, and I'll just do that as a PDF just to keep record of it. And that will look a little bit something like this. So even if there haven't been big changes from one period to the next, I would still advise keeping record of the pension assessment from each period, because then at least you've got a good understanding of what's happening with everyone and you're keeping record of all of this information too. So I would just print this as a PDF, I could print it out, save it to my computer, and I know that this is October's pension assessment report. But the pension assessment is just a great way to see all of this information in one place. And again, it does take away that manual burden of assessing your employees and manually assigning the scheme. So let's go back to the slides. We'll have a little bit of a recap of what I showed you on this report. So first of all, on the left-hand side, you can hover over the flag icon to see any changes to employees this period. So this could have been a change in the worker type or something like that. You'll be able to see details of it. Top right, you can choose from the drop-down to filter the employee list or search for their names as well, which is really handy if you've got a lot of employees. Just in the middle, you've got the option to view the worker type and status of an employee. And you can hover over the status of the employee using that little magnifying glass. Just a few more details on this and any next steps for the employee too. And then on the right, you can check the employee and employer pension contributions with totals. And that also has a refund column too. And then last but not least, in the top left, you do have the buttons to opt in or join, opt out or leave, or postpone. And speaking of those options in the top left, that does lead us nicely onto the next section, which is all about processing postponement. So I'll give a little bit of an overview of what this is, along with what opting in and opting out is before we go back into the demo. So as we now know, an eligible employee is automatically enrolled into the pension scheme in the pension assessment, but for a variety of business reasons, you can postpone an employee's automatic enrolment by up to 3 months. Now you can only postpone it from your duty start date, a staff member's first day of employment, if you've had new starters, for example, or the date a staff member first becomes eligible for automatic enrolment, if the work category had changed, for example. Postponement is commonly used to delay automatic enrolment for temporary staff you might have. For example, if you've got some people joining over the summer months or over Christmas who are going to be working with you for less than 3 months. That's a common example. Or for staff who begin working on a probationary period too. So that's kind of some examples of when you would use postponement. And before we dive into a demonstration of this, I will also go through a little bit more on opting in and opting out while we're on the slides. So opting in or joining, I did touch on this before, but this is for employees who are non-eligible or entitled. Non-eligible employees have the option to opt into the scheme, and they can do this by writing to you, the employer. And if they do opt in, the employer must also contribute to the pension. Whereas entitled employees who join the pension scheme, again, they'll write to you, but this time the employer can choose to contribute, so you don't have to with entitled employees. And this all depends on which worker category they fall into. Opting out of the scheme as well, so this is when an employee decides to leave your scheme within a month of being enrolled, and that's known as the opt-out period. So eligible employees who are automatically enrolled, they must request opting out through the pension provider, and the pension provider will then inform you of the request, which you can process in Sage 50 Payroll. And an employee can still leave the pension scheme after the opt-out period, but that is when it will show as cessation in the assessment, as I showed you before, as they left the scheme, but it was outside of the opt-out period. And then just linking to opting out as well, a little bit on pension refunds. So you must provide a full refund of any pension contributions if the employee has opted out within the opt-out period, which again is 1 month. But if the employee is left outside of the opt-out period, they've left the scheme outside of that, but a refund is still applicable, you can still process a pension refund, but you will have to do that through enter payments instead in payroll. So it won't allow you to do that through the pension assessment because it's outside of the opt-out period. So do double check the refund policies with your pension provider as well. It is different depending on who you're with and of course the kind of individual scenario as well. And I've linked an article just on the slide providing a bit more information on refunds. And if you do need to process that through enter payments, it does have the step-by-step for that too. But again, let me turn off my camera and we'll go back to the demonstration. and I will show you the kind of next steps there. So I do still have the pension assessment open for October. And as a reminder, the only employees with a change flagged are employee number 7 due to their earnings and employee number 14, who is my new starter. Now, as part of my employer duties, I would need to write to these 2 employees to let them know that they've been automatically enrolled and what this means for them, and that's known as sending pension correspondence. The employees then have the right to opt out if they wish, which they would request through the pension provider. But now that I've finished my assessment for October, I'm going to close the assessment, just using that button there. And this is when I would just continue with my pay run as normal. So I would do my pre-update reports, I would upload my pay slips, but for today's session, I am just going to skip ahead and update the records. So I'm just going to skip through, always take a backup at this point, but just for quickness, I'll skip that. And we can see my employees have now been updated for my October pay run. And let's skip ahead a little bit more. Let's pretend I've finished October, I've sent my full payment submission as well, and then fast forward a month, and I've come back to process November's payroll. So it's a month later. I'm going to change my process date to my next pay date, which is going to be the 30th of November. Remember, I've got a monthly pay run. And I'm also going to highlight this employee here. So they did start in November. This is my new employee this month. So I'll make sure I've got everybody highlighted. And then step 2, I'm going to go to enter the payments. Now everyone is the same this month. Most months they are, to be honest, but there is a few changes I need to make. Employee number 8 is actually due a pay rise as their contract's changed. So let me skip ahead to them. And I just need to increase their pay here, just according to their new contracts. That's going to be £815 for the month. And then I'm just going to skip ahead to employee number 15 as well, my new starter. And I want to double check that they've got their salary in there. Perfect. So that's showing all as expected. I'll just close down enter payments. And step number 3 was to click on the pension assessment and take a backup. So I'll click yes to a backup here. Again, work through this wizard. And I'm going to call it pension assessment November 2024. But since I've already got one, version 2. There we go. Perfect. And again, once I've clicked OK on this message, we'll see it assesses the employees with that loading bar. And up comes November's pension assessment. So a couple more changes this period I can see. I've got 3 flags on the left-hand side this time. So we'll take a little bit of a look as to what's happening there. First of all, employee number 8, their worker categories changed this period. That's actually due to the increase in their pay. So I upped their pay to £815. They were entitled, but their worker type is now changed to non-eligible. So now if the employee wants to opt in, they can do. And I, as the employer, would have to also contribute to the pension scheme. Employee number 11's change. So they have had their birthday, they've turned 22, and as I said last period, they've been reassessed, and because of this change in their age, they are now eligible. So as a result of this, their worker type has changed to eligible, and their status is changed to automatically enrolled. So they've been enrolled into my pension scheme. And we also have a change for employee number 15, my new starter. So the programme again knows they're new, has assessed them as eligible and automatically enrolled them into the pension scheme. Now employee number 15 is actually a temporary member of staff for me. They're actually only going to be working with us for around 3 months, just on the build up to Christmas, as it is a busy period for us. So what I'm going to do is postpone their automatic enrolment. So I can postpone this employee for up to 3 months from the start date, and it is nice and quick to do this. So just using the tick boxes on the left, I'll select the employee, and from the top left, I'm going to click on the postpone option. In here, all I need to do is enter the date I want to postpone them to. So I'll click on this little calendar. Notice if I skip ahead 3 months, so skip forward, the longest I can postpone this employee's automatic enrolment is until the 6th of February 2025. So it does kind of cut off those dates. This is the longest I can postpone them for. So I'll select that date and click postpone. Confirmation of that change there, and I'll just click OK. Now this employee is leaving us beginning of January anyway, but if they were still employed with me when that postponement date comes around in February, they would be reassessed at that point, and if they remained eligible, they would then be automatically enrolled. But that is how to postpone them. I can see their status has changed in the assessment to postponed. Their contributions are showing as 0. And if I hover over this, they can opt in early to the pension scheme. So if they do decide to change their mind or do want to be in the scheme, they can opt in. So just a reminder, postponement is for up to 3 months from the employee start date, your duty start date as an employer, or the date a staff member first becomes eligible for automatic enrolment. An example of that would be if the employee's worker categories changed due to a change in their age or wage. But that's then postponed. And a few more changes that I need to process this month too. Employee number 8 is actually written to me and asked to opt into the scheme. So I need to process this. So they've recently become non-eligible. We can see their status over here and also the flag showing me this. So once they opt in, again, I as the employer will also need to contribute to the pension contributions. To opt them in, I just need to select them, click the opt-in/join button at the top and fill in this little screen. So I need to enter the date that I've received the request from them, which was the 11th of November. And I just need to select the pension scheme that they're joining, which will be my pension scheme. You do also have the option of attaching the file, so like the request file for the opt-in. You can do that there. And a little tip from me as well, if you do select the scheme and you find it's still got the red ring around it and you aren't able to click opt-in, if you just click the tab key on your keyboard, that'll kind of refresh that box for you and you can click opt-in. We can get a notice there that it's been successfully applied. So they have now opted in. Straight away, their status has changed here. And we can see their enrolment date is set to the 6th of December 2024. So it's the next relevant period. So that's employee number 8 opted in. And last change I need to make this period is actually for employee number 14. So remember, this employee was my new starter last month. So they were eligible, they were automatically enrolled. But I've actually sent my pension correspondence out to them. I've let them know that they've been automatically enrolled and what this means for them. And since then, they've contacted the pension provider and they've opted out of this scheme. And I've just received notice of this from Nest, my pension provider, and I need to process this. Again, nice and straightforward to do. Select the employee, but this time click opt-out/leave. And it's just a case of filling in this window. So I'm going to enter the date that I received the request, which again was the 11th of November. I can attach the file if I want to, the opt-out request. I've also got the option of ticking whether there's been an extension period used. This is for situations where the opt-out request isn't correct, and what it allows you to do is extend the opt-out period for up to 6 weeks, just to allow that employee to complete the form correctly. And although this is greyed out for me just because of my timings with the dates, you do also have the option to refund the first month's contributions, again, depending on the dates, and whether or not they've opted out within the opt-out period, which my employee hasn't. But when you take that, the refund will show in this box at the bottom here. This will show with the employee's refund. So the employee's figure will show in here, but the employer's refund will show on this main kind of pension assessment screen here. And the employee's pay slip, if they did opt out, that would show the correct refund for employee and employer with a kind of split amount there too. Alternatively, if the refund is going to be processed outside of payroll by the pension provider, you can select this box too. But I'm going to go ahead and click opt out. Again, another notice that it's been successfully applied, so I'll click OK. And because they've opted out outside of the opt-out period, it's showing a cessation. But we can see we have got notice there that they've left the pension scheme, and next steps, if they do want to opt back in, they absolutely can. So I've now successfully postponed employee number 15, opted in employee number 8, and opted out employee number 14. So they were my only changes this period. At this point, again, I could save a copy of the report. I could just save my PDF as normal. And once I'd done that, I would just need to click close on the pension assessment and carry on with my pay run as normal. And that is the pension assessment. So as I said, at this point, just carry on as normal, but that does bring us to the end of this demonstration. So we'll pop back to the slides and we will have a bit of a recap of what we've talked about. So when to run the pension assessment? Well, this is going to be after you've checked the process date and entered the payments, but before you run your pre-update reports. And you can run it from the process map if you're a process map user, or from your payroll tasks. For postponement as well, it is nice and quick to postpone an employee who's eligible for automatic enrolment. You just need to select the employee, click the postpone option and enter the date of up to 3 months. And just a reminder, you can only postpone from your duty start date, a staff member's first day of employment if you've had new starters, or the date a staff member first becomes eligible for automatic enrolment. For opting in, you'll select the employee, but this time click opt-in/join. Enter the date that you've received the request from your employee, along with selecting the relevant pension scheme that they're opting into or joining. And lastly, for opting out, select the employee, click opt-out/leave, and enter the date that you received the request. You do have a couple more options in here, so you've got the option of ticking whether the extension period's been used, to refund the first month's contributions, or alternatively, just tick whether the pension has been kind of handled by the pension provider instead, and then just click opt out. Processing these requests will change the status of the employee in the pension assessment, but don't forget you can hover over the magnifying glass on the right hand side to view details of the status and any next steps for the employee as well. And remember the 4 steps of running the pension assessment, which is going to be step 1, check your process date, step 2, enter the payments, step 3, click the pension assessment option and take a backup, and then step 4, which is to just view the pension assessment report and of course make any changes that you need to. But with that being said, we have made it to the end of the pension assessment webinar. And before we wrap things up, I do have just a bit of further support to go with through with you too. So for webinars, me and Duncan do run these throughout the whole year for Sage 50 Payroll. We've had a lot of pension sessions this month, still a couple left to go. We've still got one on the pensions data exchange and one on pension re-enrollment. Lots more coming up as well, including new starters, processing leavers, and 2 sessions on getting your payroll done as well. It's broken down, so we've got a processing payroll session and then one on any month-end tasks that you've got too. We've also got our next HR advice webinar, giving loads of helpful advice on the topic, how to address performance issues in the first 2 years of employment. So you can head to sage.co.uk/webinars or click register now on the handout to sign up for any of those. And you've also got the option of watching any previous recordings that we've got too, so hopefully we'll see you all there. And something else to be aware of is our new one-to-one bespoke training options. These will be amazing if you're new to payroll in general, or you're just new to our product, Sage 50 Payroll. But it'll include training bundles on admin automation, the pensions module, holidays and statutory absence, and new payroll administrator report. So if that is something you're interested in, you can email UKI Sage University at sage.com for a personalised quote. We've also got the Sage Help Centre, sage.co.uk/help. You can search the knowledge base here, access support guides, demonstration videos, of course our webinar section which has all of the upcoming webinars and recordings. And if you do need to get in touch, you can contact our experts there too. And last but not least, Sage University, sageu.com. Here you can set up a free account, you can access e-learning and bite-sized learning, as well as earning product certification too. So it's a great way to expand your knowledge on Sage 50 Payroll, things like your payroll fundamentals, payroll year-end when that time comes, and of course, yeah, get certified on those too. But that has brought us to the end of the webinar, so thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I do hope you've learned a thing or two about the pension assessment. And if you are leaving us now, remember you can download the handout. That'll have all of the slides from the webinar today. And feel free to copy and paste any of the Q&A if you want to keep any of those questions or answers. Still a couple of minutes left, so if you do have any last minute questions, just make sure you get those submitted now and we'll try our very best to answer them all before I kind of end the session. And last thing from me, there is going to be a short survey that you'll get as you exit the webinar. If you do have just a moment to fill that out and you've got any comments you'd like to leave, me and Duncan would really appreciate that. We do read all of the feedback and comments that you leave us, and we take those on board for future webinars. But that is it for the pension assessment. So I can still see some questions in that questions panel. I'm going to go on mute just for a few moments to kind of finish up answering those with Duncan, and I will be back in a few moments to say goodbye. So I'll go on mute and be back in a moment. Hello everyone, thanks so much. That's just me back again. I think we've just managed to get onto the last question there, so Duncan's getting an answer out to that one, and that should be us good to go. So keep an eye on your emails. You will be getting a recording of the webinar coming through to you, so feel free to watch that as many times as you need to. Take another look at the demonstrations if you'd like as well. But we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully we do see you on another one of those webinars coming up very soon. So on behalf of me and Duncan, we'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.